Hey guys, welcome to Nyonya Cooking. In this video, we are going to prepare a very special recipe because it's going to be Christmas. And this is how to cook Peking duck with potato dumplings. Now from the name itself, you know that there is Peking duck involved, and yes, that's true. But there is a twist to it because this is a fusion dish. I incorporated the methods of Peking duck and then the elements of a German dish which I used to always enjoy during Christmas. And it is served with turkey normally, but I picked duck for this dish, and then red cabbage along with Knödel, and this is potato dumplings that I really love. It's soft, it's springy, it's so delicious, and I thought maybe I just tweak it a little and give it some Asian flair. So there I have Peking duck and then the elements of fermented vegetables, but we're not going to ferment the vegetables but still have the sourness of these vegetables, and then also these potato dumplings which I really love. You're gonna like this recipe if you love fusion dishes and is ready to try something different. For this recipe, I'm cooking for two, therefore I use 2 drumsticks here. And this is duck. You can also use turkey or chicken if you like. And Peking duck requires the skin to be really dry, but because we want to cut the time down, we're going to add a bit of baking powder, a bit of salt, then mix well. And then we're going to just pour it over the skin. And then give it a massage. By doing so, you don't only lessen the moisture of the skin, but the salt would actually give the skin a smoother surface. So we're going to leave this aside. Meanwhile, we're going to prepare the marinade that we're going to place in the meat side of, or the flesh of the duck. So I have a bit of hoisin sauce, soy sauce, 5 spice powder, mix it well, a garlic, and also a slice of ginger. And to this I'm going to add a bit of sugar. So you can use white sugar. Here I'm using brown sugar just to add a bit of sweetness. And there you go. But before we marinate the flesh, what we're going to do is to take a sharp knife or maybe a fork and then just lightly poke through the skin of the duck. And this helps to render the fats that is in between the skin and also the flesh. So, yeah, very carefully. And the second step that you need to do is to separate the skin from the flesh. All you need to do is just lightly tear this apart. You can also use a chopstick to push your way through. So you see the fats here? That's what I'm talking about. So keep pushing until you reach to these ends, yeah? And then you can stop so that the skin still somehow sticks to the flesh, but just, so this is how it should look like. Then turning it aside like this, and I'm going to place the marinade that we prepared. Now again, of course, this will be best if you can leave it overnight and let it marinate, let it sit in the fridge. But since we don't have much time, again I'm going to use a sharp knife or a fork, just lightly prick the flesh. I am going to place this over, place one drumstick over the other, like that. Okay. This is a little trick that I do if I want to imitate the cooking of the whole bird itself. Like the Hainanese chicken rice recipe, if you want to check it out, the link is in the description box. Now in that recipe I cook a whole, the whole chicken. Now that's fine if you're cooking for a big group, but most of the time it's only for 2 people or for a small group, and that's why you use drumsticks like this. And if you are also doing the same, this is what you can do, or else cooking the whole bird is also fine. But because you want to imitate that process, I have the marinade in between the meat so that it touches each other. So therefore when you grill the meat, it will not be too dry. So now using a bamboo stick, I'm just going to weave them together. You can make the sticks shorter by breaking them. Now that it's done, I'm just going to take a paper towel, lightly dab onto the skin, and then place it on this grill pan. Then finally just sprinkle a little bit of baking powder, rub it all over again, flip it. So I've switched on the fan in the oven without any heat, and this is because I want to imitate the process of cooking Peking duck to make the skin really dry. And we are going to place this duck in and leave it for a few minutes. While the duck is doing its thing in the oven, we are going to prepare Knödel, which is the potato dumplings. I'm going to add a pinch of salt to it. Now I have already skinned it earlier. I'm just going to cut it into smaller pieces so that it cooks faster. Once the water is boiling, we're going to carefully place the potatoes inside. We're going to boil them until it's really soft. We are now going to create this mixture which we are going to bathe the duck with. So add a bit of soy sauce. And then some water. Then to that mixture, I'm going to add a bit of molasses. Now if you don't have molasses, you can also use honey, but it will be a bit sweeter. What I normally do is just directly use a spoon, scoop a whole chunk of molasses that I would need to use, and then directly place it into the gravy. But here I have still some molasses left, and the only way to dilute this is using a bit of hot water, really hot water, or I place it also in the oven or microwave if you have it, to make it more manageable, and then you can slowly pour it out into the gravy. So as you see, in this case, this is slightly softer now. Now that we have the duck here, I'm going to just move it over to a plate like this, and you can either directly pour this mixture on top of the skin, or I like to brush it over. Then turn it over. Once you have brushed every area of the duck, especially on the skin, you can then just carefully pour this over. Now as you see, it doesn't really get every part, that's why I like to brush. And then I'll carefully flip it. Right, and then it goes back onto the tray. And then into the oven again. Once the potatoes are soft, you can lightly mash them, and to make it into a dough, you will need to add some wheat flour and also tapioca flour. But as you can see, it is a little bit dry right now, so we're going to bring everything together by adding an egg to it. So just keep mixing well until it creates a soft dough. Once it comes into a dough, then we're going to add a bit of scallions to give some taste to it. Now normally Knödel is shaped into a ball, but now I'm going to shape it into a ball and then press it lightly so it looks like a pancake, a very fat pancake. We are going to boil this, and once it floats, then you know it's ready, then you can just dish it out and put it aside. As for the duck, we are going to bake it in the oven. Now previously we only had the duck in the oven without any heat but just the fan switched on. So now I'm just going to heat the oven at about 200 Celsius. And once it's heated up, I'm going to place the duck inside, and then we're going to bake it for about 20 minutes before flipping it onto the other side. As you can see, there's a lot of oil, so you need to really flip it on the other side to ensure that the oil is really rendered out and that it flows out. Now once that's done, during the second flip, brush it with the excess molasses and also soy sauce mixture that you have earlier. Just another layer, and then bake it for about another 10 to 15 minutes. So in total, the whole baking process would take 20 minutes for the first round, and then flip it aside, another 20 minutes, and lastly another 10 to 15 minutes. During the last round, you can lower the heat down to about 160 Celsius. At the bottom of the pan, you'll see the oil that is rendered out, and we are going to use this to cook the rest of the side dishes. The first side dish that we're going to serve the duck with is this spicy, sourish vegetable dish. It really tastes like kimchi, but a very quick one. Now kimchi is sour because of the fermentation process, but we don't have time to ferment vegetables, so let's make a quick one. Now I'm going to add a bit of garlic, and then also some ginger, and then add some Chinese cabbage, now this is actually Korean chili paste. I'm going to take a spoonful of this and add it to our Chinese cabbage. Now this ingredient is what makes kimchi. If you do not have this, you can also replace this with blended chili, so it will give quite some spiciness here. A bit of fish sauce, because we want these vegetables to be really soft, I'm going to add a bit of water, about 2 tablespoons, just to cook this down and also to make this chili paste a little bit more diluted so that we can mix it around. Now you see where kimchi actually gets its redness. Now let's give this a few minutes to let it really boil and to soften the vegetables, so the lid of the pot will really be helpful. Okay, now that that is done, we can check on the duck. Oh wow, oh voila, voila, voila. There we go. Now I've baked the duck for about 50 minutes. I've also removed the aluminium foil that was wrapping the tip of the drumsticks, and if you do not do that, you would actually risk the tip of the drumsticks getting burned. So that's why do that before baking. And now that this is already done, we're going to let the duck rest. I've switched the stove or the oven off, and I'm going to place it once again in the oven just to let it rest. I'm not going to do anything, and then we're going to take it out once it's done. Looks like the cabbage is almost ready. Very red. And this is when we're going to add a bit of scallions. Red, green, beautiful colors. Now kimchi, if you know it, is basically fermented vegetables in this really delicious red chili sauce. Now because it's fermented, it has the sourness, and remember I said that we're going to imitate the sourness by using a bit of vinegar, and this is when we'll add vinegar to it. Now remember, less is more. So adjust the sugar, adjust the vinegar according to your preference. If you really like it very sour, then add more vinegar. Now the sauce that we'll be serving this dish with is sweet. So therefore the sourness really plays a role in this dish. With the oil that we have rendered from the duck fats again, we are going to now caramelize some onions. At medium heat, we're just going to saute this. Now we are going to prepare the sauce for this dish. The base of the sauce is basically hoisin sauce. Then that is what you use to make Peking duck. So if you know Peking duck, there is this mandarin wrap, and then you spread some hoisin sauce on it, and then layers of ducks with the skin. You can place it on it. And that's how you eat Peking duck. But for this dish, I decided to use hoisin sauce as the base, and then we're going to add a bit of orange juice, some cinnamon stick, cloves, bay leaves, just to add this Christmassy touch to it. It's already smelling like Christmas over here. We're going to let the gravy simmer for about 2 more minutes, and then we are going to deal with the last step, and that is to cook these potato dumplings. Now these are already cooked, but we're just going to pan fry it a little to give it a bit of crust on both sides, and then we can assemble the whole dish. So the smell of cinnamon stick, it's just so marvelous, and it screams Christmas. So this is done. I'll pour the sauce aside because we still need to cook the potato dumplings. For the last step, you can also use the oil that was rendered from the duck fats, or here I'm just using a bit of vegetable oil. I'm just going to let this heat up, then carefully place them onto the pan. Now while that is browning, we are going to assemble the duck. So I've already removed the stick or the bamboo sticks, and that is why we can just easily separate the ducks, the drumsticks. So over here I'm going to take a bit of vegetables. Then we're going to add a bit of scallions, place it on top. Now this will give really a tinge of freshness to the dish because all the ingredients that we have here are all cooked, and once we have fresh scallions, that's really going to do the trick. And it is also one of the important elements that you will need when you eat Peking duck. And lastly, I'm going to carefully place the duck right on top. And look at that, it looks so gorgeous. I can't wait to dig in. Now if you're bored of the turkey dish and you want something different, this is the recipe to go for. I think it's really amazing if you could try this out, and also this potato dumplings. And it's also a German specialty. So try to make this, and it's really simple. And once you've tried this recipe, of course, take some photos, upload them on www.nyonyacooking.com, because that's where you can share your photos with others to inspire them to recreate this dish as well. When I first tried this recipe, I wanted to make it into balls as well, just like the German version of the potato dumplings. but I figured out that it might be too tricky because when you look at it, it looks exactly like a German dish, but when you taste it, it has all these Asian flavors. Extremely hungry right now, and this is how it looks like. Without further ado, as usual, a bit of sauce. Let's begin into the potato dumplings first. I just love the sauce. The orange juice does not only contribute sweetness to the gravy, but also there is a punch of citrus in it. Of course, it's orange, right? Kimchi, spicy. Ooh. Now let's try the duck. I'll take the sides. And some onions. You just have to try this recipe. Everything comes together so well. You may not really taste it, but there's also a hint of cinnamon. And this kimchi definitely gives a kick to the spiciness of this dish. Delicious. I'm gonna go on and on, but it's really so good. Never have I thought I could Asianize this dish. And if you love fusion dishes like this, write to me in the comment section below and tell me what kind of other dishes you'd like to see. I'm gonna sign out now. I have this last bite, and then I'm going to continue eating. Until then, I hope to see you guys once again. Send me your comments, your photos through nyonyacooking.com. Remember to subscribe to this channel if you have not, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Until then, a very merry, happy Christmas, and also a happy new year. Lots of health and wealth, and also joy to each and every one of you. Till the next year, 2017. Bye, happy cooking!